In terms of what happens when generative AI can't. First is you have a lot of confidential data. We spoke about employees sharing proprietary data, confidential data, summarization data, which is going on to some of these LLMs. And one of the key problems is you can't unlearn. When you send it to this, you just can't say GPT unlearn, because even OpenAI cannot claim that it can unlearn the data that has come to it, right? We had this famous, I was in one of the AI conferences in UAE. We had this massive debate between one, I don't want to name the provider here, hyperscaler, very popular hyperscaler, you know who I'm talking about, and a major CISO of a bank, a public argument on whether the so-called LLM which they are providing shares data outside their jurisdiction, because there was no way technically to demonstrate that data is not going outside the jurisdiction before learning, right? So there is no way that any of these public LLMs have, though they claim that it's within that particular tenancy, can claim saying that the data is not going beyond that particular tenancy. It's a quite, especially in the cybersecurity world, many of you would agree that there's more marketing than actual sense when it comes to those assertions. And expensive rollbacks, right? So you really can't roll back some of these data points. And of course, PII being used in training data sets is a common challenge when we have AI developers internally as well. How do you ensure there's massive data that is being used, and how do you ensure that there's no PII data being pushed into those training data sets, right? And of course, prompt leakage. We all know that users typically now the concept of, one of the key things that many cybersecurity solutions, including ours, have coming out with something called AI firewalls, or AI, we call it AI prism scanners, which essentially make sure that the data is actually scanned for PII before it's actually put out in the LLM. So that's basically one big problem which is happening in the prompt leakages. So my intent of actually being here is just to give you a flavor and the other side of cybersecurity or data protection from a generative AI standpoint, right? I kind of made my case, 2-3 cases. One is it's not just hunky-dory of using generative AI from cybersecurity. Cybersecurity need not be privacy. So I've added a little bit of more privacy context of what generative AI also brings about. Overlap between privacy and security, but it's not the same. From a privacy standpoint, most countries are enacting laws. I have my friend are pushing things a lot more stricter. So if you're using any of these tools, you need to be very, very cognizant about that we are going to be held more accountable for. And it's not in India, but across the world. Right? So you have limitations of where sensitive data can be stored. You have residency issues. You have to be forgotten. You have GDPR's reach, and of course you have the EU AI Act point here. So what do you need to do? A couple of things. One is make sure that key thing is isolation, data minimalization, which is really the fundamental concept of data privacy, is don't store something that you don't have. In fact, one of the key things that we have as an organization from CISA is a data discovery and a data classification tool which helps in that. You need to have PET, the privacy enhancing technology, which can really help. There's a lot of concept and a lot of great groundwork that has been done on synthetic data, which helps PII being used for sensitive data. And then of course, one of my favorite topics, that one of the key things that people ask me is, what do we do? And I always say, go private on LLMs. I'm a big fan of the DeepSeek kind of disruption that has made, that you no longer now need to use heavy resources. You could still have in your own environment your own LLMs, and it's quite economical now. And I would encourage organizations to go private in terms of their LLMs, so that at the end of the day, they can control the data residency, as well as what I call as narrow LLMs, train that on your data sets, so that you're more in control of how these data gets, and also meet privacy and security requirements. This is a broad framework of what CISA does. We are a forensic-driven cybersecurity solutions company. We do compliance, security testing, data protection, training, and then of course we have bulk on AI security as well. We've launched our program with CERT coordination center in India. We have the first AI, cybersecurity for AI course. You can look it up online. We do certifications along with Government of India for AI specifically. So we have got cybersecurity for AI, and any one of you are interested, I have my colleagues here, or you can reach me out. So with that, I pass it over to Vinay. Is that? Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for showing us the other side of generative AI, reminding us to be careful and tread cautiously, and for also showing us the right way to secure the generative AI. Certainly a lot to think about. Mr. Vinay, I would now request you to take over the stage.
Use this mic. So I'll set up. Looks like it is.
All right. Too much light here. So good afternoon, everybody. I was actually going to make you stand up, do some exercises so that you can be out of your snooze movement after the heavy lunch. But anyways, I think looks like Darshan did a pretty good job of waking us up. So I'll move on. I think I'll get a clicker. The clicker. Yeah, thanks. All right. So I'm going to take it to the next level. After Darshan, he talked about Gen AI. I'm going to talk about data in particular. And the mouthful word, which is anonymization. When I'm not working, I'm doing these things, but I think there was a good introduction of myself before I came here, so I'm going to skip this. I think we've heard WhatsApp got bought over for, what, 19 billion? Insta for 1 billion. And we're seeing many of those cases of late, right? Do we know why? Was it the way of like texting people or something like that, or sharing videos? No, right? It was the data. We all know, I mean, I'm sure that Facebook saw the potential that WhatsApp has the potential of getting into billions of users and being able to actually understand what they're doing, and so that they can do targeted marketing, sales, advertising, everything. And same with Insta. So looks like data is, as Darshan was saying, the next oil, the next gold, whatever is valuable in the future world. But that's where it is getting to. And it's very important that the companies also stay ahead, right? Stay ahead of the game. They use data in the right way. We've seen Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Netflix, everybody using data to their biggest advantage and churning up billions of dollars every year. But we have also seen that companies who haven't leveraged data in the right way have actually gone bankrupt. If you see Blockbuster, Target, and many others, right? Like Kodak and so on and so forth. So one is not using the data, but then also the problem is that even if you're trying to use your data in the right way, there is a huge chance that your data can get stolen. It can get corrupted, it can be hacked, you can be held ransom for millions and billions of dollars, and you don't want that, right? So just some stats, about 1.7 billion records got breached last year, and each incident costed about $4.8 million, and I think the projection is about trillions of dollars next year onwards. So hopefully none of your companies get into that billions and trillions of dollars shelling out to people just because you did not do the right thing. In fact, I just have a story, personal story. One of my friends who's a dev, who's a really awesome dev, a techie guy, got scammed for 50,000 just using normal social engineering techniques. Okay, and we see these series like Jamtara, all these things, and this has actually happened. I've seen that. I've seen the WhatsApp messages of what happened, and I was so amazed that so simple things, so many simple messages can actually help scam or con a techie guy. Now you can imagine what happens to a non-techie, right? And in the future world of AI, just imagine if these scammers, these hackers are able to get hold of the next gen AIs, which are getting so cheap and so easily available, and no code as well. What will happen? The scale that they can launch the scams and with such ease is going to be at a very next level. We as companies, I think we keep on generating data. I think this is a no-brainer. We need to be aware what tech we are using, right? Because there is a huge chance the tech or the third-party tech that you are getting and hiring and even installing on your devices, on your servers, itself might be unsecure, right? They may have the backdoors to get others into, and your data can just be compromised then. So not just your data is protected, but also these three aspects, which is your people and processes and tech, they are all secure as well. I will not try to focus on these three aspects right now because that's not the scope of this particular discussion, but we'll talk about the data, right? Data security part. There are only mainly two things that ideally we should be doing. One is the prevention and one is detection, of course. You may say we've been doing this all the way, so what's new, right? I think the new part is going to be how we're leveraging AI to go do this in the future. And because I think only a diamond can cut a diamond, and so your AI can only cut an AI or can hold your defenses. So it's important that when you're putting your prevention techniques in, they have to be AI powered, right? They have to be dynamic in the future world. They cannot be static anymore, and so on and so forth. So I'll quickly go through this because I also don't have much time here. Data access, classification, access control. I think somebody talked about this, that it's important that you classify your data into PII, restricted, confidential, this, that, etc. So you spend the right money on protecting the right set of data and not everything out there, right? Because you may have tons of data out there. Not everything needs to be secure to that level of security. So it's important to classify that because it also helps you put the right controls, measures in terms of access controls, right? Like then you can actually go and define saying this data can be only accessed by this particular person and not that particular person, and so on and so forth. Now, where does AI come into this picture, right? Like there are new techniques that are coming into picture, which is dynamic access controls. So the AI actually goes and looks at, hey, is there a suspicious activity? Let's say a bank employee is trying to download account data at 11 from an IP address in Nigeria, right? Generally, that person would have been allowed because he has the authority or she has the authority. But if you have AI, it can actually detect these things. Hey, this looks suspicious because generally this person generally operates in this time frame, right? And generally from this particular location. But I see this is suspicious. Let me temporarily at least block this. I will notify the SOCs and everything, and then let them take care of it. But at least I'm restricting the damage that could have happened, right? Similarly, in masking, a lot of our data actually stays in our data centers and is also getting used for testing purposes, for training our AIs and everything. But if we start masking the data itself in the actual databases, we are losing the sense of it, right? And that's where dynamic masking starts coming to picture using AI techniques. Like, let's say a customer care agent is calling a bank account or holder. the masking can be done automatically, dynamically, while they are on the call for a credit card number, so that the agent is not able to see it, and so on and so forth. Similarly, encryption, very, very important. AI can help you actually identify where there is a weaker encryption for the kind of data that you have there, and so on and so forth. That's where AI can help you. Ethical hacking, now that when you implemented all these things, it's essentially they actually validate as well. That whatever you put in the controls, they're actually going to work. So you can leverage things like ethical hacking. I'm sure Darshan's company helps in these kind of stuff. There can be simulations like social engineering attacks and others that can actually happen. And make sure that it gives you the confidence and comfort that whatever I put in place actually is going to work. And the last, and the reason why it is sort of highlighted in orange, because it is not really part of your mechanisms, but it is important that you as executives of the company, especially if you are non-tech executives, it's important to still know what's going on with the AI that you're using in your company. Because there is a huge chance that the data it has been trained on is not the right data. It could be biased data, and so on and so forth, right? So understand, there are courses, very elementary courses as well, basic courses as well, just to know about AI in the new world, and so on and so forth. So take them and ask those questions to your techs, IT companies or IT teams, and get to them. I'll quickly finish the next one. So although you put the prevention mechanism, there is still a huge chance that actually things can go bad, and that's where you need detection, and which is again AI based. You can have threat detections which will actually go through millions of logs that are happening across your servers dynamically, and actually give you results in seconds and tell you things have gone wrong, raise the alerts, and so on and so forth, by doing behavior analysis as well. Like as I gave some examples in the past, those things are something that can happen. And the last two acronyms, SIEM and SOAR, these are basically tools. The SIEM or the SIEM tool are actually capturing a lot of logs across these systems, making sense out of the whole thing, raising alerts, notifications, so on and so forth. And the SOAR, which is security, operations, automation, and response. These are the ones which will actually give you, help you quickly deploy some short-term patches as well, automatically, right? So that's where AI comes into picture with these kind of tools as well. So just want to make sure that you guys all need to get ahead of the game. The world of AI is changing dynamically outside, and so should you. So especially in terms of data security. So thank you for that.
Very classily and beautifully articulated, sir. Prevention and detection. This is invaluable not only for current CEOs and leaders, but also for the next generation of CEOs. Thank you, Mr. Vinay. We would now like to call upon Ms. Lakshmi Dubey. A big round of applause, please.
That's not my presentation. It's the other one. Hello everyone, thank you for having me here. And I'm so excited and so thrilled to be here because I cannot resonate less. Like, I'm completely resonating with what Darshan said, what Mr. Vinay said, and whatever I've learned since morning, it has been really valuable. So I would say this day went really well, I would say. Meanwhile, when the presentation comes up, I'm Lakshmi. They did a really good job of giving my introduction. Thank you so much. And that's so sweet. Meanwhile, we have been talking about data since morning, and can you think of a point in your life when you think you have started creating data? Forget about Gen AI. But in your life, when do you think you started generating data? It's right away from your birth. Your parents clicked your pictures, your date of birth certificate, and it doesn't end there. It ends with the life, and even maybe after life. So it's endless, and I would talk about certain aspects of that also. But I think data is becoming more and more critical, and then comes innovation. So we are talking about AI, we are talking about data, and then we have innovation. And AI itself is one of the innovations. So innovation being very close to my heart as a UX designer, I think the more you think about it, the more complex it becomes. So what I've learned since my childhood days is keep it as simple as possible. And that's what I'll try to do. How to keep it more simple and how to create a balance between these three complex terms: innovation, security, data, AI. Are we good? Thank you so much. I hope I did a good job in managing this. So yet again, data protection and privacy in the era of Gen AI, and trying to balance innovation with security and trust. And here are some core values that Salesforce, a company, stands by: trust, customer success, innovation, equality, and sustainability. And these core values have actually put us ahead of curve when it comes to Gen AI and the practices, data, AI, you call it whatsoever. Because when trust comes at the core of your values, that's when customers are already believing in you, they are already comfortable trusting with their data. But we are saying we are not irresponsible about it. Your data is not our product. Our product are services that we are going to offer that will help with your tasks, that will help with your core processes. In the advent of CRM and with the advent of Gen AI, we'll try to leverage technology and try to foresee that how can we make the best use of these technologies to propose solutions, to propose the outcomes. So today we are standing at the intersection of AI and privacy. AI, which is deeply imbibed everywhere, every part of the process, every industry, every sector. You speak everything and every other person will come and say, yes, we are using AI. Yes, we are using ChatGPT. Yes, we are using Gen AI. And the other part is the data explosion. Because of this ubiquity, there's a lot of data that is going to be generated. And I don't have to stress more on it. My fellows have already done that. Since morning we have been talking about it. So a quick start, 90%, and this was an outcome from one of our research, and there was a Forbes article also about it, that 90% of the world's data was generated in just last 2 years. Just think about it. What could be the scale of it? And it again calls for the attention about data centers, sustainability, cost. There are numerous expenses, there are numerous after effects that are going to come out of it. And the other part that we found out was, which was very much in context, was 65% of the customers were worried, and they would certainly stop using a particular brand if they find that they're misusing their data. So concern is real, right? We are not just talking in the air. And with the advent of Gen AI, it has introduced 73% of risks. The outputs could be biased, 59% of the users agreed, and then outputs are inaccurate. That means, yes, it could be helpful, but only maybe in 41% of the cases, or maybe around 40% of the time, which is not actually helpful in the real world scenario. So what do we do? And what do we want from AI? If that is the case, then we have certainly, because customer success is our core value, we certainly want that tip of the iceberg. But as I said, it is an iceberg. There are other things that come around. There's lack of transparency, there is uninformed consent issues, bias, ethical concerns, regulatory issues. I think we have been talking about these terms since morning, so I don't have to re-enunciate on that. But we have come to terms with these terms that yes, these are real challenges that are coming and that the world is going to face when the AI-driven culture comes into the picture. And I believe today we stand as, speaking of Gen AI for that matter, it started like a couple of, let's say 3 years back, and today it is in a, not in a nascent, but rather at a toddler stage, where it will learn and it will give you something, it will behave in a way with the data, the kind of data you feed into it. It's just like a child. So the toddler child will behave in the same way, the kind of manners, that kind of things they see and they imbibe. Same is with our Gen AI today. The trusted data security is actually based on an ethical foundation, and that ethical foundation is really critical. And for that, we need trusted AI technology. And at Salesforce, we are trying to prioritize building relationships, building trust with humans and between human and agent. And how do we build that trust? It is only possible with the help of some guidelines, some principles, which can be utilized during the design and development processes. And while the agentic AI, Agent Force, we have been talking about Agent Force, but it doesn't stand in the air. It is all about utilizing the ethical practices, some principles and guidelines that can actually navigate us further. So here are some trusted AI principles that we stand by. And speaking of responsible AI, it is all about safeguarding the human right. Just imagine AI generates some article and it leads to some war, or it leads to some misunderstanding, or there have been several instances and there have been several case studies around it. So we certainly want our AI to behave responsibly, to protect the data, and we protect the data that we have entrusted in, right? Be more accountable and leverage the feedback. There should be a human in the loop. Take the human input in the loop so that the human factor, the human acknowledgement, the human, let's say, intelligence is already taken care of, because any which way AI is a tool which humans have developed. So we certainly have some scope out there, though it is intelligence, but we certainly have some scope out there for feedback, for human in the loop. Transparency. Our AI principles really vouch for transparency, and when a particular data set or certain parameters are being used to generate certain results and outcomes, can we not communicate to our customers, can we not communicate to our users that this is what your outcome is based upon? You feed in this kind of data, and that's why this is the kind of outcome you're getting. Having said that, that can actually draw certain guardrails for the user to be more cognizant of the kind of data they are feeding in. And even to create that trust that, okay, I know why this kind of result is coming out of me, why this particular agent is suggesting a certain kind of action. Then empowering and being more inclusive. I want to speak more about inclusive, and empowering is more about, of course, taking the society forward and not just sitting inside the computers or mobile phones. The outcomes from Gen AI, the trends that are going to get set with the help of this Gen AI trends, need to take the society collectively forward. And the outcomes, the decisions that come out of it should be in that direction. And inclusivity. 4 or 5 years back, or maybe even more, even as a UX designer, we were the accessibility, and I'm just a little bit changing the topic here. Accessibility was an afterthought. And today, if you talk about it, even the farthest off person, and let's say even our prime ministers have been talking about accessibility as the top-notch thing that they want to achieve. Everything has to be, every public place has to be accessible, right? It has become the forefront thought, not the afterthought. And I think the same goes with AI as well. Our AI patterns, our AI solutions have to be inclusive enough, which doesn't go with any biases, which is more cognizant of the fact that, yes, what kind of user they are serving. And instead of creating a biased output, they are more cognizant, they are more well diversed, actually. So with those principles in mind, we try to gather all of it and take in the right direction, where we serve with accuracy, safety, sustainability. Why sustainability? Because we want to have only those prompts, we want to engineer prompts and test prompts which actually generate which uses just the enough amount of data to generate the right and most optimized outcome. Honesty, as I said, transparency, integrity, honesty goes hand in hand, and empowerment. And here are some privacy approach that we have been using, and Einstein Trust Layer helps us do all of that with the help of zero data retention, data masking, and anonymization, which Mr. Vinay rightly mentioned. Explainable AI, again, leading to transparency, and compliance-ready AI. I think this is high time that we start speaking about compliance and start delivering compliance even from day one. And when it comes to balancing the act of innovation, I think that's where compliance can really help. Right from start of and conceptualization of a product or a service, we can start thinking about what sort of data am I going to use so that this kind of prompt is getting generated, and from that prompt, certain outcome is getting generated. With that, I think the path ahead that looks like is that if you want to ensure AI privacy and security, we need to have privacy first approach from day one, even when you don't have the product or development or code on screen. Right from day zero, you have to start thinking about privacy. The governance, ethic guidelines, show the users how their data is getting used, be more transparent, empower them, be more, and think about how anomaly and threat detections, etc., like putting all these policies in place and being ahead of the curve, being ahead of regulations. Even before government puts in, we can start our own regulations and say, okay, this is the way we'll operate with AI. And that's how we can balance innovation and AI practices. So future of AI belongs to those who can innovate while they earn the user's trust, while they are delivering ethical AI, and only then you can proceed further, you can win this game. And for now, for innovators out there, for all the AI professionals out there, I would say, I'll just re-enunciate the same points again and again. Maybe I'm redundant, but I cannot emphasize enough. AI-powered security can be a game changer. We have addressed it earlier also. Compliance and have to go hand in hand with companies, and you cannot deny from that. And privacy, transparency, and user control. You cannot put the human away from the loop. Human feedback has to come inside the loop. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me here.
Highlighting the challenges, steps that you are taking to build trust was truly insightful. Thank you, ma'am, for showing us how we as organizers believe even 1 second was redundant. Thank you so much for your time. Before we begin the next session, Mr. Vinay, please. Next we have Ms. Lakshmi ma'am. If we can have a picture with all of you, please. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. We will now begin our next session. It's a panel discussion, Securing Your Data, the Risks of Data Sprawl. First, as panel moderator, we have Mr. Shubhajit Saha, Head, Legal and IPR, LCGC Resolute Group of Companies. Can we please have you on stage? Next, we have Mr. Venkata Ramana Ratnakaram, Chief Information Security Officer, Spandana Spurti Financial Limited. Can we also have Mr. Rohit Ponnapalli, Chief Information Security Officer, Cloud4C Services. Mr. Subhash, Director, Post. And finally, we have Mr. Samir, Principal Associate, Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan Attorneys. Mr. Subhajit, I request you to take over.
Thank you for that introduction. I think at the outset, I would like to thank ASSOCHAM for setting this wonderful conference. Before that, I would request I think today my panel has a lot of custodians and guardians of security information and data in their own companies. So they are all elite panel, which I think has been with me today. So I would like to just give them the opportunity to introduce themselves, probably a minute or two, what they do and what they are going to talk, and then we'll actually take some questions, we'll field some questions to them and see how we'll make it more interactive. So I will first request Samir to kindly introduce yourself.
Sure. Hello everyone, good afternoon. I'm Samir. I'm a principal associate with a full-service law firm called Lakshmi Kumaran and Sridharan Attorneys. I've been working in data protection, information technology law, liaising with companies on privacy, data protection laws, including the recently passed Digital Personal Data Protection Act, which is on everyone's mind now. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Subhash, and I'm the business director for our post. And I've been in the field for the last 23 years. We are a cybersecurity firm which specializes in some unique products, and my team is out there at the back. If you need to know more, I'm sure you can reach out there. But having said that, I've been based out of Hyderabad for quite long. I've been here since, 1997, the time when the entire IT industry started setting up here. So it's been quite a long journey in this location and dealing with a lot of customers. So it's a pleasure to be here. Looking forward to this discussion.
Good afternoon all. This is Venkat. I represent Spandana Spurti Financial. I am a CISO at Spandana. Spandana is one of the India's largest microfinance organization. I look after cyber security, information security for India's largest microfinance company. Thank you.
Hey, hi everyone, good afternoon. I'm Rohit Ponnapalli, total 16 years experience, worked in IT industry, BFSI sectors, consulting, so played multiple roles across my career. Currently working as a CISO for Cloud4C and the group companies.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, they say the least knowledgeable person becomes the moderator. So it's very easy for me to moderate you guys. But actually, just to begin with, I think we've been talking about data since morning and data protection. I think Nandan Nilekani mentioned that, we Indians will be data rich before becoming financially rich. So definitely it's a wonderful statement. And just to give you an insight, I would request that I got my hands on this book called Privacy, Right and Data Protection by Dr. S. Chakravarti, who's actually a former IS officer and part of the MRTP Commission and Competition Commission law in India, who was very instrumental in designing the law. So it's a beautiful book. I would request you all today to actually get your hands on it. It's in ASCII, Administrative Staff College. And one of the statements which I was talking about to my panelists is that in today's data-driven world, what we have done is, I think we have traded an imperfect democracy for imperfect dictatorship. So that's very, very
the powerful statement, like we've given everything, we've lost our, freedom of choice and taking decisions, putting our data there, and then what next after it goes. So that's just a kind of understanding I would request you to kindly go through. So let's begin the panel discussion. So my first question would be to Mr. Rohit. So you being the Chief Information Security Officer, so you must be going through a lot of data sprawl and a lot of data pilferage. So what, according to you, from an organization perspective, is causing data sprawl in today's tech-driven world and data-intensive atmosphere?
See, data sprawling has been a concern from last 15 years, not right now. See, companies grow rapidly, okay, they onboard multiple vendors, they onboard multiple applications, they onboard multiple SaaS applications, they rent out their data centers to a third party or their applications as a third party. So they have people managing their applications. So data discovery or data management has been a bigger concern throughout any organizations or any industry, if you ask me. Now the question is, now if you don't know what is your data, then how do you protect the data is a bigger concern for any organization. See, people or companies have been using legacy applications, legacy hardware, still legacy hardware, and there are some business units within the organizations where they have privileges to go rent out their own public cloud space without the knowledge of, let's say, CIO function or a CISO function, and CISO has no clarity about where the data is residing, is a major issue across the industries. Okay, so now the major problem here is because of the rapid expansion and because of the rapid data collection, the applications can be collecting PI information, the applications can be financial information, the applications can collect citizens' data as well. If the visibility is not available, see, I operate on two things, one, visibility and agility. If the visibility of what data is available, what is the data classification, or what is the data ownership, if these three things are not known to, let's say, organization or a CIO or a CISO or a CTO, it would be difficult for securing that particular data. And rapid expansion could be the main cause, and adopting new technologies, not knowing what is, not having any legal contracts between the organization and a vendor, using open source tools, or using renting or private buying your own public cloud space. These could be the major reasons for data sprawling.
Thank you. That's well put, because there's a Chinese proverb which says that if you cannot measure it, you can't manage it. So it's very important that you actually measure and then understand the quality, and then label your data, do an audit or identify, and then probably manage, so that this can be curbed, if not completely eradicated. My second question would be to Venkat ji, is that now that we've understood that there's a lot of data sprawl, it's not that new, people are aware, it's been done. So what are the risks associated with data sprawl as a chief security information officer in a financial company? Because the stakes are high, because just we saw data can make or break a company, what the previous speaker was mentioning. So what is your viewpoint from as a custodian and guardian of data in your company, and what do you think that would be the challenges, or what are the risks which are posed due to this data sprawl?
So, we all know data is growing exponentially, and also risks associated with this data growth also growing exponentially. A risk in the sense, like say, managing the data. So how to store this data, how to process this data, how to secure this data from both internal and external threats. So from my view, entire cyber security is meant for data security. Like say, whatever controls we implement, whatever compliance framework we adopt, so all these things are meant for securing our data. So organizations' reputation also depends on data security. If data is breached, then organization will have reputational loss and also business loss. In some day, organization also will be disappeared from the business. So risks mainly from external hackers. Like say, there are different types of risks associated with that. What an organization can do is continuously monitoring the implemented security controls and also adapt to new technologies with respect to securing the data, and do dark web monitoring continuously. Dark web monitoring helps us to find out leaked out data that will help us to arrest our security controls, like say to gaps in the security controls. And insider threats, how can we counter insider threats? Means, so we have to have various controls like encryption, encryption for data at rest, data in transit, and also data in use. And we will be hitting with quantum computing very soon. So whatever encryptions algorithms we have right now, those will be broken in future with the help of quantum computing, and organizations must ready for post-quantum, must ready with post-quantum encryption algorithms as well.
Thank you, Mr. Venkat. Actually, beautifully put forward. I think that's a very pertinent point which you have raised. Like, how do you actually, once it's have the preventive measures, as well as how do you post work on if there is a data spillage and sprawl. Thank you so much. So my next question is to Sameer from the law firm. I think you must be dealing with a lot of legal and compliances issues. So what are the liabilities and compliances which one should be aware as an organization and as an individual when you're actually going through this data sprawl? So what are the liabilities and compliances which one should be knowing, just a checklist for and best practices you feel?
Yeah, obviously we know that a new data protection law is currently being passed, and we're awaiting enforcement timelines for that, etc. So in this context, while I give my response, I think it's also important to note and understand that the Digital Personal Data Protection Act is very different from various other legislations across the world. It does not have as onerous obligations that we would find, for example, in the EU GDPR. It's way more nimble and way more targeted in what it seeks to achieve. I think in this light, I'll give a three-pronged response. First is organizations need to understand and adhere to the key principle of minimization. I think someone earlier, one of the speakers was also pointing out to how minimization is so important, and that is absolutely key. The lesser the data and the lesser the liability for organizations, and it's important for organizations to recognize it and accordingly mindle their data processing activities. Having said so, for instance, in 2022, the CNIL, which is the French Data Protection Authority, actually penalized a lot of organizations for failure to meet minimization obligations. This obligation is not as hard-coded as we would find it under Indian law, but it's very important for organizations to mend their activities right away. The second is with reference to vendors. I think someone else also pointed out, it's so important now to ensure you have adequate oversight over how vendors operate. And this does not only mean that you have a contract in place, you have appropriate provisions in place, you have indemnifications in place. That's alone not sufficient. What is required, especially from an Indian law standpoint, is to ensure your vendors are performing. And you do that by ensuring you have an audit prior to onboarding, periodic audits, and of course, along with that, contracts. Again, the differentiating aspect under Indian law is that there is no direct liability for processors under Indian law, something that we see that is there under EU GDPR or PDPS Singapore, etc. And that's one of the more important aspects that fiduciaries need to keep in mind to ensure they're having and appropriating covering against any vendor risks. The last is specific data, specific obligations. If you're handling particular kinds of data, there is going to be a particular set of obligations that would apply. For instance, if you're handling payment information, you will have to ensure you're storing it within India. If you're handling certain other sensitive data like health records, you will have to store it accordingly. So data discovery in that context is so important for you to understand what is happening with the data that you're processing, what processing activities are you undertaking, and how you're dealing with it at the end of the day. Right from collection until disposal throughout the data lifecycle, it is important to map all of these activities against whatever laws and regulations apply to you. And in that context, as a last note, it's very important to recognize that the DPDPA is, or the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, is only a base legislation. It's an umbrella legislation. It's not intended to replace any of the more specific sectoral laws and regulations that are issued, for example, by RBI, by RDI, etc. DPDPA is only umbrella, and all other sectoral laws and regulations will apply over and above these requirements. So it's important to map for each sector as well as for each data set you're processing in that context.
You want to add something here?
Yeah. See, just on a lighter note, see, regarding this data minimization, right? I was speaking to one of the application team of my customer team, and we were checking what kind of data security controls they need and to understand what kind of data collection they are doing. They have listed down almost 30 to 40 parameters of a PI information for a particular person, right? Now, if I look at the overall application functionality, it hardly requires 7 or 8. But the reason why they are collecting 40 parameters of a person is to have a version 2.0 of the same application. See, now they have to start collecting from day one so that they can start working on version 2.0 or 3.0 updates without adding more and more complication. See, data minimization is easy to say, but when you speak to the actual business team, that's where the conflict comes in.
Thank you. Basically, we say that in IP also, intellectual property, when you're trying to patent, one size does not fit all. You have a different strategies for MSME, entrepreneurs, startups. I think in data, I think the data is data, whether it's large or small. There is a spillover, whether your trade secrets or commercial data. So I think and as long as you know the size and the quality, I think it's definitely the strategy which is working out. So now next is, I think I would request Subhash to talk about, because he being the custodian of many data tools which actually helps companies to save their emails and give technologies which actually help them in this multifaceted cloud world. So what exactly are the issues you see, are the cybersecurity threats which you foresee in this, and what are the best practices as a company which you give to your clients to maintain data sovereignty in this world of multi-cloud platforms?
Thank you, Sujit. I think some of the points were covered by my colleagues out here, but I'll talk about 3 things. Okay, let's look at the first one. First one is, if you have your data spread out, you are more vulnerable for attacks because you don't know where your sensitive information is lying on, right? So that's something which you really need to focus upon. Now, you have certain things within your organization. That's something which you can probably control fairly easily, right? You have some tools in place. But there is a set of data which is not within your control, which has gone out of your hand, right? You have sent over an email, you have sent over as an attachment, you have shared it over WhatsApp to someone. We have seen that, right? A bank comes and, you want to open an account, an executive comes in, and there are times where you are sharing your Aadhaar card, etc., quite easily, right? We don't think what happens to that information if that executive loses their phone and how it will be kind of, gone into wrong hands. But we share very quickly as individuals, sensitive information. So you need to always look at how are you collecting the information from your customers, etc., which is sensitive through various methods, right? And how it is getting dispersed through various mediums. So email is one of the common medium where you would be sending it across, and some sensitive documents you're sending out. Second thing is, you will struggle with your compliances, not just from the security aspect. If certain records needs to be purged after a certain point of time, how will you ensure that those documents are purged? It is not with you, right? With you, there are some things you have sent out, but what is the guarantee those information are purged at their end? So you need to kind of look at systems which can help you even destroy those communications after it has gone out of your hand. That's another important aspect which you might want to look at it, right? Now, if you have the third one is your ransomware attacks, right, which can happen. If you have your sensitive information spread across, you have lost control of it, which most of us know, right? And then what happens if it is fallen into wrong hands? What do you do? So how do you you lose a lot of money. People are losing a lot of money because your sensitive information is available there. Right? We were recently speaking to one of the healthcare customers. They were talking, once the doctors, the lab reports, etc. is there, they download it, then they have now control. As long as it is in the system, it's there. But once it's downloaded, what do they do? You send it over an email, the control is lost. So you need to figure out there are tools available in the market which will help you navigate how you can, track those things which is there. There are document rights management tools, some security tools which can help you track. Encryption is definitely one way to do, but it will have limited protection, right? Again, it is getting saved in the cloud. What are their policies, which Mr. Narendranath also mentioned, right? What policies are those vendors maintaining in terms of purging that information? So that's something which we have to always look into it. So you have to build that into your contracts and make sure that you are monitoring that particular data is getting purged, right? That's something which you miss out because people change in the organizations, but the data is remaining somewhere. It might be collected by somebody, but if you do not have proper policies, practices in place, and tools, if you don't invest in the right tools which will help you monitor this, controlling becomes very difficult. So that's my 3 parts. So you look at it, you're more vulnerable for attacks. You lose a lot of money in terms of your compliance if you don't comply to the regulatory bodies by keeping those information for a longer duration. And then you are, again, threats which comes in, right? Sensitive information, you have a data leak and a breach happens, you're in trouble. So at the end of the day, you lose out a lot of money and reputation. So that's my 3 points.
Thank you. Beautifully put. I was just giving kind of a very lighter note on an analogy. Kind of in earlier days when you shoot an arrow and then they wanted to stop it, the arrow comes back. So, in those Mahabharata and Ramayana thing. So once your data is out, I don't know how you can't get it back, but definitely there are control systems and management tools actually to mitigate this. So that's on a lighter note. But basically, if you see the Black's dictionary also says that, privacy is the right to be left alone. But to what extent, and it's important because sometimes the data used by the government as well as big tech companies are really helping. But what happens is the erosion which happens or the mistrust. So I think the laws and the technology will definitely take care. And it's always said that technology is ahead of law. So definitely with AI tools coming in and a lot of AI being talked about. So I would pose this question to each one of you. Probably first Mr. Subhash, to begin with, because you were the last. So what, according to you, you see would be the best practices and the future of data protection security, and what can one do? In fact, I would not say to completely, be foolproof, but at least to mitigate, and what technology you foresee coming in the next 5 years, or which can actually reduce the spillage, given more leverage for companies to share information as well as leverage it without compromising on their commercial interest or their trade secrets or high-end data. So what, according to you, would be the technology trends which you see? And probably the next to my friend would be the legal angle.
I think it's very difficult to predict what technology trends would come up, right? Because it's quite coming at a very fast pace. The way things are evolving, it's very difficult to say that. So I would probably not take the risk of telling the technology trend. But having said that, as organizations, as I mentioned, right, you need to really invest on the tools, the right tools, to ensure that you have control on the data. That way, spillages you can control, right? Whatever medium you are sending the data, if you have an ability to control that data, that will be something which is very helpful. That's something which you should really look at without too much of delay, if you have not really looked into that. That's something which I would say something people should look at.
You see the new law and the rules.
Sure. So just in terms of the new law and rules, I think it's fairly clear two things that have to be kept in mind. One is data inflows. When you're receiving data, do you have appropriate mechanisms in place? Do you have consents? Do you have you provided notices? Have you made assessments? Second is data outflows. Data outflows two ways again. Do you have internal policies in place, structures in place, governance frameworks in place to ensure you have access control, you've taken necessary technical measures? Second is, do you have vendor contracts? Do you have vendor audit procedures, mechanisms in place? So I think the principal factor of compliance with the Digital Personal Data Protection Act is to ensure you're handling all pilferages of data, mapping inflows, outflows, and having corresponding obligations meted out to each inflow and each outflow, and just plugging the loop on all inflows and outflows potentially. That should do the trick insofar as the act is concerned, at least.
Yeah, so what, according to you, your organizations, or you would suggest, are taking steps to mitigate this risk factor and look into a kind of best practices which you would give it to the audience today?
See, with respect to implementing best practices, right? See, data, when I say, let's look at data ownership. Data ownership lies with the application owner or the business owner, right? Now, when we have 10 business units, there would be 10 business requirements. If you have to, the first step that you can do is data categorization. For example, your HRMS is your PI categorization, right? And your insurance portals or insurance information could be your PHI. And revenue or financial could be, let's assume, you have to be abide to RBI guidelines or SEBI guidelines. So when you start categorizing your data, that's when you start looking at the controls that needs to be implemented, both from the confidentiality point of view and then the regulatory point of view. Okay, not every kind of data requires the same kind of controls as per the compliance or as per the business case, right? See, you have to balance between the cost as well as the compliance. Now, if I'm saying if a PI data has to be stored only for 6 months, the cost of storage would be less. But if the same RBI or banking related information should be stored for 7 years, that's when you need to implement more and more controls and more cost also. See, data categorization and data classification, and then start putting controls around where the data is lying and what kind of controls are needed and who needs to access that particular information. If you can put controls around those 3 parameters, most 90% of your issues will be resolved. Now, the 10% depends on this culture of the organization. See, no matter how many controls implement, that is most of them, of the controls are the hygiene part of it. Now the consistency of those controls is important, and that's where the 10% is important. If the consistency is not good, no matter, let's say, point in time, if you look for point in time security or point in time compliance is a big bubble. For audit purpose or for, let's say, for some showcase purpose, you would clear the audit or anything like that, but the consistency is not there. That's when you have more and more legal issues or reputational issues.
So I'd request Venkatji to add on for the same thing, like what you exactly see from the financial company perspective, like what governance structure, framework and guidelines, which I think you would follow or kind of give a, I think there's no such one mantra, as you have to understand your data sets, do a lot of due diligence, mining, and then take necessary steps. But in a nutshell, if you were on to conclude and say that, what would be the takeaway for you as a chief information security officer of your organization, where you see high risks, business risks data going in and out. So what exactly organizations should perceive and take cue from?
So data domain, data security domain also evolving. That means, like say, there are technologies available for data governance, data detection and response, data access governance, and also data security posture management. So these tools or solutions play crucial role to identify critical data and also to identify various access permissions given to various users, and on the fly you can identify the risk, like say high volume of the risk, and also on the fly you can revoke the access. So data security domain also should have automation, like say automation, risk automation, identification of the critical data, identification of the critical users, right? And also the data localization, like say, as a business owner, you should instruct your service providers to store your data within India or within certain region of India, so that you will have control over the data. And also, like say, for data security, there is a golden rule, that is 3-to-1 backup. So always, wherever you have primary backup runs, whether it is on-premise or on cloud, but you should have a read-only backup. Read-only backup means we call it as golden copy. That golden copy can't be overwritten by anyone. It is a read-only copy. So that read-only copy should be kept on-premise. In case of any disaster, you can quickly restore this golden copy and then restore your business operations. So in this artificial intelligence era, we can't prevent data breaches. We can't break our heads to prevent data breaches or cybersecurity breaches. But what we can do is, we can delay the breach. If at all, if breach happens, how soon we can restore our operations. So data security resilience will play a crucial role, and also faster incident response in case of any cybersecurity breach. So mean time to restore, that defines your organization's capability in terms of cybersecurity. Thank you.
Thank you. I think with that we come to the end of this wonderful panel, and I thank all my panelists to share their point of view on this data security and the risks of data sprawl and what each organization have to understand and do in today's world. So definitely, I think what the takeaways is that first you need to analyze, understand, and then manage, and then take measures, which is like can't be one size does fit all, but definitely have your strategies in place. And definitely you cannot get a 100% foolproof, bulletproof mechanism to seal your data, but definitely reduce the pilferage, have a better regulation framework, and as I said, technology will always be ahead. So definitely the technology itself will come out with some solution which can actually reduce this, mitigate this pilferage, and even the law is catching up, whether it is with the ownership issues of generative AI, copyright works, or the same thing happens with even data. So one thing is last is that you cannot, if you have to, you can love data or hate data, but you can't ignore, that you have to live with it, and you have to, it says, if you can't cure, you have to endure it. So that's the final take. Thank you so much once again, the panelists, for being a great, giving a great insight into this wonderful topic. And I thank the lovely audience for the patient hearing, and thank you for the opportunity for conducting this session. Thank you.
Thank you, team. It was really a lovely session. I'd call upon Mr. Dinesh to hand over the memento to Mr. Subhajit, our panel moderator. I kindly call upon Mr. Venkataramana to receive his memento. Mr. Rohit.
Automated clapping system. There's a patent on it.
Mr. Subhash. And lastly, Mr. Samir. If we can have all the speakers and Mr. Dinesh for a quick photograph. Only 4, huh? Only 4. There are 5. And now we come to our final session for today. It's a panel discussion, Green Tech, the future of digital innovation and sustainability. I call upon Dr. Sriram, CEO, Cybersecurity COE, Data Security Council of India. He will be our panel moderator for this session. Next up, we have Mr. Rajiv Belani, Chief Technology Officer, Money Control. Next, we have Mr. Anil Nama, CIO, Cloud4C Services and Controllers Data Centers. And last but not the least, Mr. Srinivas Yadav, CISO, K-Fintech. Dr. Sriram, I would kindly request you to take over the session.
Sure.
Hello everyone. So, I'm sure you have had a very exciting day. This wonderful session put together by ASSOCHAM, the support of Control S, Cloud4C, and others, and also with ISACA and Cybersecurity Center of Excellence supporting them. We've had a number of speakers. I think I'm sure you learned a lot. It was a very engaging day. And in the neighboring hall, we've had Shield also, so it's increased the excitement all around. Many people are there participating from here to there and there to here. It is quite an exciting, these things for cybersecurity especially, because security and data protection are key. Now we come to these panel discussions in which we focus on a specific aspect, which is the green aspect, green tech, which has taken on a whole new meaning and a dimension which was never there earlier before. If you look at the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, many of them, and cybersecurity coincides with at least 4 of those SDGs, including peace and justice, strong institutions, equality, all of these, many of these which are there in the SDGs, they are the ones that are really about, at least 4 or 5 of them are there in this cybersecurity. So coming to this now, data centers and the new trends of AI and IoT and its explosion of data. Obviously, energy is going to be a main concern. You see that most data centers, and we have all stalwarts here. Mr. Anil Lama is heading Control S, who owns about 30% of India's data center market and with many footprint worldwide. So you see that with the explosion of AI, which is very energy intensive, and blockchain also, which consumes a lot of energy, and plain data centers also, which are probably doing, whether it is customer support, banking operations, or anything. And also the newfangled technologies of IoT and all, which again further increase the data that is being transported. All of these require huge amounts of energy. PUE is a very favorite word in data centers. And what we are going to explore today is that green tech. What role does it play? And how do we take it forward? So my first question really is to Mr. Anil Lama. Control S has been at the forefront of green data center initiatives. Can you share any key steps taken to achieve sustainability?
Thank you, Dr. Sriram, and thank you all. See, at Control S, we are incepted as Tier 4, which is the highest availability. And now the focus is shifting from best of quality to sustainability over a period of time. I can talk about 2-3 initiatives that Control S has taken very, very seriously under sustainability. The first is renewable power. Our experimentation started in the year 2014. If you go to our Mumbai campus, we put 1 megawatt equivalent of solar panels as glass panels around the DC. So instead of glass, you have solar panels, and whatever they produce, 100, 150 kVA, is nothing but power saved and also cooling saved, because otherwise that heat would have to be cooled inside the data center. Currently, we have built a solar park in Amravati. It is working at 100 megawatts. Close to 28% of our electricity in the largest Mumbai campus is green and renewable. Our second experiment there was for water. So we were using potable water like any other industry. We recently contacted the MLD plant which was treating the water in the Vashi Creek, Navi Mumbai, to take out impurities. We are laying out a pipe from there to our data center. Today we consume close to 10 lakh liters per day of potable drinking water. And this is supposed to grow by next year, December itself, to 25 lakh liters per day. What's going to happen is, after March this year, we'll stop using potable water. We will take this filtered MLD treated water and reuse it for our DC purposes by setting up a filtration plant. So that's the kind of saving that we'll have from the water. because that water was going directly into the sea. Now we will be reutilizing it, and therefore we will be saving the potable water. Our third example is, you would have seen large buildings having transformers. We have gone one step ahead. We have put the 32 kV substation inside the building. They are known as GIS. So what happens, the grid power, which generally comes to an electricity substation unit, from there converts to 33 kVA and then comes to an industrial building. We are directly terminating the grid power within the premises. So gas insulated systems are much more efficient, and thereafter all the circuitry that we have are data center grade. So the way it helps is in T&D losses. Generally, T&D losses in India range anyways from 17% to 22% for the amount of electricity which is consumed at the end location. Just by terminating from the grid, we are reducing this T&D losses to 5 to 7%. And that is how more than 10% of energy which was supposed to be lost in different wires, step down, step up places, we are trying to save it. So these are some of the initiatives that we are looking very, very seriously for our sustainability.
Excellent outline, sir. I think this hits all the key areas, where you look at energy, sustainability, reuse, and also water. Okay. So all of these areas is hit. Next is my question is to Mr. Srinivas Yadavkari. Okay. And how does cybersecurity intersect with sustainability efforts in data center operations? Take the other one.
Sorry, sir, can you please?
Yeah, the question is, how does cybersecurity intersect with sustainability efforts in data center operations related to data centers?
Yeah, so the cybersecurity, now it's an buzzword, and the cybersecurity embedding with the AI will definitely help the data centers to analyze the data that what it is receiving from the different tools that they monitor. And this AI-driven tools definitely ensures to give the responses much faster than the traditional tools that they are using. And the technologies that are available now, if they are integrated with the AI built with the LLMs, then definitely that will help data centers in enhancing their services.
Oh, that's very good. Any challenges that you face there in securing cloud and hybrid infrastructure while still maintaining energy efficiency?
The challenges is identifying current challenges. What we see is like identifying the incidents, and the response is the big challenge what I see, and that is the foremost and priority that has to be given in the current era.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Cybersecurity has been a bugbear and a lot of unnecessary operations just to validate, just back and forth, and all of these things. And with the new fangled ones, AI, so there are AI-specific data centers now coming up, which have a concentration. They do it, they optimize it for AI. But then the question also comes that, do you need AI for everything? Certainly not. So AI is not a thing that you would like to have your stamp in just because everybody is into it, but it will be very, very energy inefficient. So in the sense where we can manage without AI, I'm talking about the proper AI, not just the general definition of AI, there may be no need for AI in many cases also. So that also has to be considered. It's where you already have efficient equations, we just apply those and do that. So that is the case. So my next question is to Mr. Rajiv. Okay. How does cloud-based and edge computing solutions, how do they contribute to a sustainable digital transformation?
Thank you so much for that. So I think I've been listening to Anil and Srinivas in terms of what they have been doing with respect to getting the most out of the infrastructure that is there at hand, right? So we heard a lot about, for example, how in terms of building data centers, there is a lot of green tech being used so that every kilowatt of energy that you create is sort of made with green tech and the most sustainable amount of creating energy. Now the thing is that all of that is essentially wasted if you don't have smart engineering at play. And I talk from a perspective of a digital native application or platform, is that it's very easy to waste energy available or compute resources available to you. And that is in my head the lowest hanging fruit, right, in a lot of ways, because green tech has a PR issue, in my opinion, where whatever we know about green tech comes from articles of TechCrunch, and they are essentially of very, very evolved sort of companies. And they all talk about their big issues, right? Big strategic problems about how to actually make sure that how Google DeepMind, for example, save 40% of cost of data centers, right? We all probably must have heard about it. But the reality of the situation is most people don't really have to face that problem. Most companies at this point in time have low-hanging fruits where smart engineering is supposed to be able to put into place so that we are able to save efficiency as basically a resource, right? Like put in efficiency as a resource. So as an example, Dr. Sriram mentioned about cloud computing and edge computing. There are very few companies, because of the way edge architectures have evolved in the recent past, have actually adapted their architectures to edge computing, which actually gives you 20 to 30% more efficiency in delivering just simple basic content, right? So I think for us, as of right now, while we evolved from a data center solution very recently, last year, to a cloud computing solution, what we have realized is that the value of every single power of compute that we have is something that we are putting into consideration right now, which is kind of gotten into place where we're now thinking about architectures which are edge native first. So that, for example, in case of money control, obviously, money control essentially is a content dispensing platform, right? It is a waste for us to be able to run compute resources 24/7 just to give same information, which everybody else wants. There is nothing personalized about it into most cases, right, essentially. Those are simple use cases. Obviously, it's a lot of deep use cases that we have to look through. But as far as workloads are concerned, edge native architectures, if you're able to devise them well, save you a lot of cost, which basically is translated to a lot of compute resources being saved and energy sustainability that comes as part of it, basically.
Sure, certainly. I think very good points everywhere. So I want to ask some evocative question to Mr. Anil Lama. So in future, now you see that a large percentage of internet traffic as well as storage is junk. Many mails are there, junk mails and all these kind of things. They are being made freely available also so that people can harvest it and use it for some other purpose and all. In order to cut it down, does net neutrality come in the way, in the sense that always been a debate in the past, but in future, if it is regulated saying that yes, these kinds of traffic are designated as junk, these are more precious or deemed as very important and all that, would that help somewhere with energy? Because at the rate at which things are exploding, even, for example, a kid playing an online game and an important are the same. Okay, as far as this is concerned. You may try the pricing structures and all, but then it's always a challenge. We hardly get paid. The costs are being driven down in the sense you pay 1,000 rupees, you get so much bandwidth. Okay. Since the road department doesn't get much money, but then people are spending the money on expensive cars and they are cursing the road saying that, look, it is choked up, they should build 8 lanes. They should that and all these kind of things. And again, that is not very efficient in terms of energies. So it's a little bit of a tricky or controversial, but how would you address that?
Well, okay, so there is a issue here which is freedom versus whatever you say, ethics, the world societies, a balance between freedom and the self-restraint. Much, then we let the freedom go. It is as good as our child being put up in some high rise and only made to study no games. And if we do the restraint less, then it becomes all play, and therefore academics suffer. I believe a fine balance. It's more of people in between. For example, in the example of the roads, it's ultimately the traffic police and the way they handle the traffic on those roads during those times. You can have on-off, you can have odd times, whichever way they want to do, non-stop, no turn, no U-turns, etc. Similarly, it is service providers like us or who basically allow these type of traffics to put in those restraint points. Classical example, let's say it's a hacker, all intelligent systems which inform us. And as per the INR also. But these restraint can't be just, we can't also be judges. The way it is that we should filter out those traffics, and as these ISP islands, maybe 80 to 90% would go down. So you would still retain some freedom. At the same time, you would have some restraint. So that's our view from controller's side, that the ISP should exception of the IP address that it leases, with having at least the top level control. Totally chaotic network that everybody is trying to do on his own.
Thank you, sir. Very balanced answer, really. For the days going ahead, will be kept in mind, because people will start doing all sorts of things with AI, and also as we see that but maybe there should be some frameworks or rules around it. If you do curb it too much, there won't be any innovation or anything left, but if you consumes a lot of energy as well. So my next question would be, Rajiv, saying that how can, so two things, performance, and how does green tech innovation impact the financial and operating costs of running a media?
So I think I will take off of the first point that I was mentioning. So experience is sacrosanct and cannot be sacrificed for in the name of anything, including green tech. But like I was point in time, for if we were able to kind of just make sure that we understand that green tech is equal to efficiency within the ecosystem, it sort of aligns our goals at the top. Start thinking of green tech, like I said, bad PR, right? We start looking at green tech as an add-on to what you are doing, and add-on means add-on costs, right? Eventually speaking. And then if we are able to rethink in our heads with respect to the fact that as of right now, green tech is more about creating efficiency in the system, then it kind of aligns our goals. Now, how that is the case is the fact that, like I was saying, for us, we run initiatives like rewarding smart engineering, right? It is the smallest of the things that you can do in the ecosystem, but smart engineering essentially has a very good add-on sort of plus effect at the end of the day, is that it uses less compute energy. Less compute energy essentially is green tech for a lot of people. I mean, that sort of creates a certain sustainable goals in the medium term for us to be then look at the long term in terms of how much to do. The second aspect of it is obviously questions about AI and what we can do with AI in terms of use cases or workloads as to if it can be built, should we build it? Those are the questions where sort of the question mark comes into picture. So as an example with AI, there's a lot of things you can do with AI. As you were mentioning, Dr. Sriram, was that if you can, I mean, should AI be deployed at certain use cases? Because AI obviously is very sort of energy expensive. Now, with the first aspect of it, if you are able to reward smart engineering, you are able to kind of take care of a lot of the efficiency goals. But with respect to strategic goals, there needs to be some amount, I mean, what we essentially do internally is to be able to take care of what the ROI is right now with respect to maybe, let's say, looking at a couple of years down the line. And if, for example, we say that, okay, there is looking at the dropping cost of energy, if we are able to, to foresee the ROI even hitting in about 18 months or so, it is something that we can take up. Otherwise, we don't take it up. And which is, I know 18 months sounds too long, too far away, but in a lot of cases with AI, with a lot of use cases being discussed over here where it will take away jobs and a lot of these financial research will be taken away, so on and so forth. 18 months is not a long enough time for the kind of use cases being thought about it, right, basically. Second question is...
Yeah, the second question essentially was that how does green tech innovation impact financial and operational costs of running a media platform? The ROI. Yeah.
The ROI question, right, essentially speaking. So I maybe had it in the back of the mind in some way. But that is where we are. I think what we tend to... a lot of the big picture problems have small solutions, right? So we spoke about sort of devising policies at a strategic level, at technology level, and money control across the entire ecosystem to be able to make sure that sustainability is part of the discussion. But let's be very honest, at this point in time, in my 9 to 8 or whatever that 10 hours of working is, we don't discuss sustainability or green enough, very frankly. I mean, there is no way that a lot of people out here will have that in the day. If that is not the case of everybody's single sort of working, then obviously people are not thinking about it. So it, I think, is a big challenge to the executive level, and the discussion at the executive level as to, at this point in time, how do we align green sustainability and sort of your growth goals.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of low-hanging fruits over there, which is what we realize. And I think at this point in time, it will help us in the medium term to be able to get to a stage where we discuss sustainability, strategic goals.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, I think it has to be inbuilt as part of the board strategy and everything. It has to take all around. I have a couple of things on. These things should be incentivized in the sense that I know of some of the startups who want to go certificate from Bureau Veritas, and that takes a long time. It is so expensive that they have spent say that yes, this process is better than many people, and that is acceptable worldwide. That would greatly incentivize the green process. Otherwise, proving itself becomes so difficult. Yeah. So my next question is to balance the security demands of financial data with sustainability initiatives, and what role does AI and automation play there?
So yeah, requirements is the high priority for us. And the data security in terms of tools now, where it is all the tool-based and automated in terms of securing the data and to address the cyber security, cyber resilience framework related requirements of the regulator. Now coming to the AI at KFinTech, we are still taking the baby steps, considering the recent threats on the usage of the AI capabilities, and especially in the data that we deal with as an PIA, and we are also CIA now announced by the NCIPC. But we are still doing research on usage of this AI technologies and the LLMs to deploy to closely monitor our data.
Thank you, Rajiv. So my next question is to Anil Lama, that a very practical one. How can businesses ensure that their migration to cloud-based infrastructure is both cost-effective and environmentally friendly? And I'll ask another question also, which you can address in one go, is that what are the most promising energy-efficient technologies that you believe will define the future of data centers? The first one is to businesses, yeah.
Okay, so let me answer the migration part first. See, whenever we think of a application, and today most of the things are web world. We have all smart devices. No longer client-server applications are there. Mostly everything is web-based. And when we think of a web-based system setup, you have to think of internet lease lines, routers, switches, servers, backup, etc., which is a lot of large hardware that needs to be put in place. Second is, on this, you also have to then load all the applications, tune it, and run it. Let's come to what's a cloud in terms of IaaS and PaaS. That's very simply all of this integrated ready to use. You have an application, you just click few virtual machines, load your applications, and everything is integrated and ready to go. So when we compare the green aspect of both, on a cloud, because there is a large many number of such workloads running, therefore there is a lot of optimization which is possible, which is not otherwise possible on a similar setup if we put on our own. The second is harvesting new technology. So now when we put in-house, we may have certain constraints in terms of people, etc., skill sets, amount of type of DC that we are making, the type of hardware, software stack that we can manage. A cloud platform. And let me refer to a recent research. Waterloo University that has just come out in open source 30-line code, as good as 5 days old. What it does is, instead of our network library being loaded as find in an Azure or a AWS or a GCP cloud, it saves them 30% web-based application. This type of innovation, this type of directly taking a scientific paper, getting it converted into a code, production release, next to impossible if I talk about setups in-house. Let's talk about another thing. Let us say we require a few GPU workloads to work. On an on-prem, it will radical thinking of how would I handle that cooling? Will it be air-based? Will it be what? When you go to a cloud, you just go ahead and use the GPU. The best in place because it benefits the cloud provider. Everybody knows that in air cooling, we can achieve PUE of 1.4. In liquid cooling, we can go down to 1.2. With dielectric, 0.8. So a large cloud provider who is using 100 megawatt, 200 megawatt setup is that much easily. Question, migrating my application to cloud, achieve, will always be at the cutting edge. Now let me try around the data center. So we have also gone through this journey. If your time was all the red pipes which were going out, we put in a water-based system, and in those pipes, instead of it running customer, there was Krativ, which is like immersion cooling, dielectric. Instead of the rack standing up, you have something lying down. Per rack, Mumbai DC is like 22 kilowatts per rack. This one rack lying down is 250 to 400 kilowatts of power consumption because of the dielectric heat exchange, which is very, very efficient or much more efficient. Never crosses 1.1, 1.2. And therefore, from an application perspective, you get that much more operational ROI as you use the latest. That is how all these sustainable technologies, the liquid cooling, etc., are forcing us to adopt. Second is I talked about solar. Solar is a very, very simple commercial case in India. When you take industrial power, it comes at 7.5. When you are generating it from DG set, it comes between 13 rupees to 17.5 rupees. When you are putting up 100 megawatt and above solar plant, your cost goes down to 2.5 rupees. So slightly more than hydro, but it's a pure commercial sense today in India. And that is how these sustainable things as getting adopted in India is leading to that much more benefit to both the customer, the environment, as well as the people who are using it.
Very well articulated, sir. I think these are all coming from practical experience of actually having gone through the journey and having implemented these systems. And I wish we'll be able to take this ahead with, in the face of all the new developments and technologies that are happening. And what we'll do is, I think we have some time left. We'll go through a few more things. So my next question to Mr. Rajiv is that what are the best practices for businesses looking to transition to greener data center solutions?
All right, so I obviously can give you a perspective of people who are on, sort of, or companies who are on this side of the equation where we are using resources made available to us. And sort of how do we actually make sure that from our perspective, we have the right tools in place, and that's sort of the key to the answer, right? Make sure, that's what my opinion would be, make sure you have the right toggles in place to be able to use in the future. So as an example, we spoke in the during the course of this entire discussion about edge architectures and being able to use the right compute and so on and so forth. But all of that will come in if you have that in place. So as an example, if you have the right CDN partner in place, if you have an architecture where you're able to use edge compute as well, if you have the right caching strategy in place. And on top of that, obviously goes without saying, for most companies, it is unsustainable for you to run your own data center. I mean, so to have something on-prem, it might be difficult. So having hyperscalers in place. These seem quite basic in nature, with a lot of companies do from the get-go. A lot of digital native companies do from the get-go. But I think what we tend to forget is a lot of companies who have evolved over a period of time still haven't been able to adopt these technologies. And if you don't have these toggles in place, you're not going to be able to use it. As an example, small example, you can toggle the type of compression at a CDN level. I mean, you change to a Brotli compression, every single byte will be compressed slightly further than you would otherwise, right? That saves you a lot of, that saves you 15-20% on your data costs, that's one. And obviously that saves you on compute and data transfer costs and sustainability. So every small little piece plays a role. Similarly, for example, on the compute bit of it, right? So on compute, how much of it can be pushed to edge is important. So when you start off, a computer workload is workload. But where it runs matters, which is obviously down to smarter engineering and smarter architectures being put into picture. So the advice is first have the right components in place, because that is something which is very difficult to roll back on. So if you do have your bits and bobs in place, including, for example, Anil was mentioning it, a lot of these are web-based architectures, which means that you can use a lot of the compute which is there on the machines of the user, right, essentially. But people don't really think about it in that way, where a lot of these libraries available can do a lot of the workload, which can be operated on the user machine instead of being sent across to a compute workload right back at sitting on the origin somewhere, right, essentially. Once you have them in place, you are able to move those toggles to make sure that you have the right efficiency versus in terms of sustainability versus outcome, so that user experience is not sacrificed. I think that's sort of what I would say as far as outcome-based delivery is concerned.
Thank you, Raju. Very good insights. Yeah. So my next question to Srinivas is that let's have a look at this one. So again, something similar, that what best practices would you recommend for ensuring a secure and sustainable digital infrastructure?
Yeah, basically like the green is the evolving, and it needs more of the awareness on its usage. In addition to that, there should be a public-private handshake between governments to encourage, and governments can give some privileges on the usage and adoptability of the greens. And there is a lot of awareness that has to be bring in on its usage. So here, like when we talk about the supply chain, the requirement is high, wherein the new entrepreneurs who wants to get into these kind of technologies, to adopt these technologies, there is no resource available. As of now, there is no skill resource that is available. So having all this in place with appropriate land of law and the regulations which can be easy to adopt will encourage and in usage of green technologies and bring in more into the usage, what I feel.
Thank you. So I'll again switch gears a bit and ask that these new technologies, you have 5G, IoT, of course, in a little future in quantum also, okay, and you have possibly AR, VR coming in, and all these things. People are attempting all sorts of remote things, maybe remote surgeries also in future, okay, and simulations and all these happening. So there are a whole slew of them which are coming in, including, of course, everything needs to be data protected and all these things which are cybersecurity related technologies are coming in. What role would they play either ways? One is in helping in the whole ecosystem become more green, and also, I mean, burdening it, because people are going to use more and more of it, right? So I'd like your views on it.
So there are a lot of new technologies which are coming in. Naturally, they'll help us achieve our goals. Let me talk about simple thing, encryption. At one time, we all thought that KMS and all these technologies were mostly used by the banks for the financial transactions. You'll be surprised to note that the secure meter projects that we are doing, they also require the devices to be identified. They also have the threat of rogue devices coming in between. They also have the threat that somebody may log in and recharge an account. And therefore, they also use the same Thales equipment that is used by the largest of the banks. And the scale is much larger. So while in banks, largest of the banks, even in Walmart, we may have a KMS system controlling between 30,000 to 100,000 devices. Here in India, we are talking about a state starting with minimum 10 mil devices. So that scale is unparalleled. Second usage that we saw about the facial recognition, which we call it as DigiYatra. So if we see DigiYatra phase 1 and phase 2, in the phase 1, it took a time we had to show the barcode and then it used to recognize. In phase 2, you don't show anything, you just walk in and it recognizes and allows you in, right? And this is an experiment at the population scale. Again, it's the deep learning or those type of algorithms, how they transposition the data, how they keep the seed, and how do they help us recognize. The third, of course, is everybody is gung-ho about this blockchain and the underlying distributed ledger. We haven't seen still outside of contracting many use cases, but it looks to be very, very promising in the wealth aspects. If you tie all the wealth properties right across investments, whether it is liquid cash, fixed cash, house assets, etc., and then you could maybe maintain your wealth across multiple countries. I feel those type of applications I've started to see in the DC being hosted. Presently, it is from the largest of the wealth advisors. Slowly, it will become more common. So outside of Bitcoin, this could be a much more useful systems for us. So with these three examples, I mean, that's how it's changing our world.
Certainly, sir. I'd just like to add a couple of 2 cents, very extremely well put. See, if you take even a simple case, like our college academic degrees, okay, now you need to protect not only the transactions of today, that means today the batch which is passing out, and their academic degrees, but also you need to protect all the data of the past. Otherwise, somebody will come with a certificate saying, I'm an MBBS doctor from this college. So obviously, you'll need to use solutions like blockchain in order to ensure that there is sanctity in this trust, I mean, in these certificates that are being done. That's a simple example. So probably that's going to do everywhere. You have in pharma also that there is a lot of fraud happening, food fraud is happening, so many areas. So possibly there are very good use cases which are untapped. So on these devices which you mentioned, there is going to be obviously a very huge explosion. As we can see, we are on the verge of a tsunami of data and all that, with all these things coming in, to the extent that we have to Even when we put the recommendations for privacy bill in ASSOCHAM, she said that apart from critical data, don't insist on localization because you cannot handle this kind of thing. It will hit the Digital India story. So that is there. So so back to Anil Namaji is that would things like, let's say, there's a move towards using RISC-V processors, for example, an open source of that in order to, yes, bring down and improve the cost to income ratio or whatever efficiency ratio. Would those things help a lot?
I will see once again, sir, there is always a penalty. Let me put it like that. What is a Red Hat or a SUSE? It's nothing but a supported version of an open source. It's not possible that at every organization and every group of people we have skills to develop and support, because I mean we see same teacher and we get marks right from 0 to 100. So my belief is both would work. Yes, open source has the looker. Open source helps, brings down the cost. But at the same time, the commercial version of it brings it like Six Sigma, the industrialized feeling. I mean a trust on the system, on which then without knowing that technology, how a fridge is working or your car is working, and you can start to run a Uber. So both are relevant. People who are interested to go and have the last mile connectivity, OpenStack is best for them. People who want to delve in their own domain and plug and play or use it as a system and have a dependent system, then the commercial is there. But yes, innovation will always be there on the open side because you have a lot more young minds collaborating there. So it is much agile atmosphere than a commercial system.
Sure. So we are out of time, but I'd like to one question to each one of the same question to each one of you. See, if you just were to go back and let me take a simple example, habits. Okay, they play a very big role in sustainability and all. For example, in our childhood and all through, probably we used a bucket of water for having bath. Now, if you use shower and make it a habit, you lose hundreds of liters of water, right? And I mean, I'm just taking a simple example. So sometimes simple habits, they would cause a big difference. Just because one can do it or one can program in a certain way, he's just done some sloppy programming and all that, and that suddenly is draining it because it's very energy hungry or so. So how much do you feel that this should be monitored, certificates issued, or control should be put, or things should be penalized so that it forces people into the right habits? Okay, saying that yes, this application is more inefficient, it should be cut at the root, solve the problem at the root stage, or things like that in general, that you discourage the use of some technologies. These kinds of things from a policy perspective and otherwise, how do you think they should be addressed? I think you get the question, right? Yeah. You can go.
Oh.
I'm just going around.
So I think I'll turn the question a little bit around, to be honest, because in my opinion, all of that ecosystem exists. Because I think you mentioned the word, you used the word habits, right? The only difference being these are skill-oriented habits. In terms of you are limited by the skill that you have to be able to employ those good habits in place. So we spoke about smart engineering. Smart engineering principles begin at writing a simple for loop down to kind of designing a full sort of six-phase ecosystem with a full architecture and so on and so forth, right, basically. And you are limited personally and also as a team with the skills that you have, essentially. So all the ecosystem in terms of rewarding the right kind of right habits, as we say in this time for this with respect to your KPIs, your KRA goals, your incentives, your appraisal, they all exist, right, essentially speaking. Most of the time, the problem happens when the right sort of the right skills are not actually rewarded at a personal level. I think that's where kind of So as an example, most of our sort of product platform management ecosystem as well, right? We tend to, it's a stupid example, but we tend to kind of sort of revere it as things will stand now. Oh, somebody's written a small little POC in an LLM with a small little prompt, and we go sort of gung-ho about it. Whereas if somebody's kind of just make sure, okay, your authentication system is in the middle of everything, is now 40% more efficient, nobody gives 2 cents about it. And those are essentially just small drivers where if you have a strategic team who's able to pick out those small changes which will cause big changes at the sort of the big impact at the end of it, is eventually what causes the big difference, even in use cases involving the more exciting technology. As an example, we talk about LLMs, right? Essentially, writing a wrapper around and a model that is given to you, which is ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever else, is the most basic thing you can do, right? Let's be very honest. And a lot of engineering team are essentially stuck in doing that. It's the most basic and the least efficient thing to do when it comes to your use cases. As an example, with money control, we know if we are actually deploying certain LM use cases of our own, we know 80% of the users are going to ask about financial advice. If we know that, we're not supposed to build a generic investment LLM model, right? And which is where the smart engineering comes into picture. We need to, if we are able to reward that, the engineer being able to take that one step forward to say, okay, no, I'm going to still write a compute ecosystem or an edge compute ecosystem to make sure that all these queries are bunched together so that most of them can be answered by cache. Sounds very boring, I understand that. But that is what you need to reward, and that is sort of the crux of everything.
Okay, yeah, very interesting points. One is on the development side. That means the architecture which are more energy efficient, you reward them with giving them extra points and all. And on the usage side also, for example, I don't know, in a building people don't switch off the lights, so maybe there are motion sensors and all these things to do that. So I'm talking in general the principle, right, of the whole thing, on how it is done. So Srinivas Garu, thoughts on it?
Yeah, so in addition to what Rajiv has told, it was well placed, so I have very few words left. Here, the habits, what I put it is in terms of the discipline and the processes. So in the organizations now, they are well matured. There have been a lot of awareness when it comes to the organizations. Now they follow certain processes for every approach they do, be it setting up any new setup, or maybe setting up any new tower in the organization or any configurations. So there are certain set of guidelines which are there as part of the process. Now coming to the usage of green, there is a lot of awareness that has been brought in both from the public and private sector, and there are a lot of initiatives and innovations that are being done in the energy sector, especially storage of energy in terms of electric batteries, say, and IoT technologies, where the communication, the monitoring of every aspect